Hello and welcome to the Harrogate podcast with me, Andrew Gray. In the Harrogate podcast, it's my job to interview and deconstruct the movers and shakers in this wonderful Harrogate bubble in which we are lucky to live and work. Good morning, Sonia. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Andrew.
Now, Sonia, you describe yourself on LinkedIn and on your website as an executive change consultant. I'll say it again, an executive change consultant. I say it twice because I've never heard of an executive change consultant. Tell me what you do and how you help people.
Well, first of all, what is an executive change consultant? It's someone that enables someone to make changes for themselves in a way that can be measured. So what we do at Saxton's is we enable people to access what's fantastic about them, also what's temporarily getting in the way in terms of their behaviours, and then give them some tools to fix that. And we do it on a guarantee basis. So basically, if we don't fix it, we give you all the money back.
Well, it seems like a no-brainer then, really. No risk.
Well, we think so, because you can only win on this, can't you?
Yes, so, and you've been running Saxton Partners, I see, since 1999.
Yes.
Congratulations on running a small business all this time. So tell me, how many people are involved in Saxton Partners?
There's only half a dozen of us, mostly associates, each specialising in a different field, because we like to offer difference. We're also part of a number of strategic partnerships, which means that we can act like a one-stop shop. So if there's something you want, and for some reason we don't immediately provide that, we will know somebody who does that, who we've had personal experience of, and know that they will deliver a result that can be measured and something that you can rely on.
Understood. And congratulations again, running a business for 9 years. It's not easy, although Harrogate's a great place to run a business. But my question is, to become an executive change consultant, you suppose you must have done it in other fields before setting up your company. So tell me about your education, your background, how this has all led to you founding your company 9 years ago.
Well, first of all, my background was in sales. I've been doing this for over 35 years.
Wow.
Makes me sound really old, that, doesn't
No.
it? And I started this because I was working for an insurance company and I was going into all sorts of roles. And eventually I was in a training facilitation role. And somebody said to me, Sonia, you're fantastic at making a difference to maybe coaching 3 people a day at that point. However, we need you to see 6 a day. And I needed some special skills, a bit of magic to make that difference. So apart from the usual institute personnel and training exams that enable you to coach on an everyday basis, I thought that I'd need to study psychology, cognitive behaviour therapy, and I started getting into that. And then I discovered something. And that was that when you understand business neurolinguistics, you have a means to get straight to the cause of something working or not working. And that set me off on an adventure. I started studying neurolinguistics, got my practitioner qualification, then mastered over in the States. I spent a lot of time in the States, and then went to international qualification level so that I could be an international consultant and trainer. But I have a flaw.
Do tell.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And in some ways, I'm a bit ashamed to admit that when I got back from the States and thought I was the bee's knees, to be honest, having qualified at that level, I had dinner with a friend and they said, yes, but you haven't qualified with this other organisation, which was the International Association of Trainers. I immediately booked on. I did all the training again. Cost me nearly £5,000, so I was twice over qualified. So I qualified then in Copenhagen as well, which was great fun. And I learned a lot about me and learned that the first thing you have to do in order to make things happen and make changes for yourself is to look in the mirror, see who you really are, and ask yourself, what are the things that I need to have done differently to have made a difference to the way that person in the mirror comes across in making a difference for other people? because what's the point unless you're going to make a difference?
Understood. You use the term neurolinguistics, I think, and I know that me, for one, doesn't fully understand what that term means. And I imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast also won't know. So could you sort of break it down into real simple terms, please?
Absolutely. So, neuro-linguistic programming. So, neuro is first of all about the mind. What makes you tick? Linguistics is about language, how language affects the impact of what you're saying. And programming is the way that your motivations and beliefs work together. So if we take the mind first, the mind, your body, and what you say to yourself is all connected. So for example, in your mind, if you are believing that you're going to have a bad day, then you probably will, because the mind believes what you tell it. And linguistically, if you say to yourself, oh, I'm going to struggle, I can't do that, I'll have a go, I'll try, then you affect your brain and you affect what it can produce. So, for example, if you said to yourself instead, okay, if I had have achieved that, what are some of the things that I would have done differently? You'll already start to shift your mindset. And your programming is about how your motivations and your beliefs work together. So your motivations are based on your core values. And what's a value? A value is something that you tend to establish by the age of 7. You probably heard the saying, show me a boy of 7 and I'll show you the man. You create a foundation up to that age. And then you develop some belief patterns. And the belief patterns will switch your motivation on or off. So, for example, if you believe that there is always a way, and it's only a question of how, then you'll always find a way of achieving something. And that'll maintain you being switched on to your motivation. If, however, if you're using those language patterns I mentioned earlier about, oh, well, I can't do that, it's too difficult, it's too hard, then you'll switch yourself off. So it's about putting yourself in control of whether you want to stay switched on in life or off.
Okay, that sounds somewhat woo-woo, if you don't mind me saying, but you don't come across as someone who's sort of woo-woo, so out there, alternative. Give me some real practical examples of the people that you've coached and perhaps some examples of how they've made a real change in their lives thanks to your help.
Okay, so if we take somebody recently, they were referred to me because they, for some reason, just couldn't get out there and make it happen anymore. They were paid $85,000 a year, and the MD said to me, we'll call him Fred. We need to get him back out on the road, Sonia, because we just don't know what's going on for him. So the way it works is you can't just refer somebody and expect them to, be booked in and turn up. They have to drive things themselves because people have to feel in control. So I asked what we're calling Fred to give me a call, and I listened. And these are some of the things that Fred said to me. People stop me from really getting on. They make my life hell. I am so stressed, that I know things are just getting to me more and more. Now, what's interesting about this language is that it's about blaming other people, making something else outside of themselves to be responsible for their state of mind. And I asked him if he understood what sort of impact it makes when you say other people are in control. He said, well, it's their fault. If they didn't give me so much hassle, Sonia, I would have been okay. So I said, so what's it like giving power to something outside of yourself? Well, I don't give them power. I said, well, you're making them in control of whether you're okay or not. What would it be like if you decided to be more I call, more I? I've decided that I'm going to make it work today. And I've decided I'm going to find out what are some of the ways in which I can make sure that's happened for me. He said, oh, that's a very different mindset. So I said, is that something you'd like to develop? He said, yes, I'd like to know more about that. I'm curious about that, how that makes an impact, just talking about it. So he came in to see me. I did a profile for him. We have an individual diagnostic tool that's actually our own tool based on some proven work by a guy called Albert Ellis and Claire Graves, who was a student of Maslow. And it establishes what are your motivations and 12 areas of behaviour that are temporarily getting in the way. And no surprise that when he did this profile, he was judgmental, he was defensive, he was very needy. And once he could see on the graph what was working, what wasn't, he said, yes, I really identify with that. So I said, it's up to you. I've given you the awareness about what's working and what's temporarily getting in the way. And incidentally, we check this at a subconscious level. It's very important to understand that if you just fill out a questionnaire, that's just what you've ticked. It needs to be checked within the mind to make sure that's a true reality, because sometimes people make things up in their head about what they think is going on for them. And he said, yes, I agree with that, and I really want to sort it out, because I realise that, you know, the sort of money I'm on, I don't want to lose my job, Sonia. So can you help? And I gave him some tools for accessing what was causing some of the issues. And that's simply about people being able to relax and give them some tools to access what's temporarily getting in the way, like the defensiveness, neediness, etc. And when they understand where it originally began, they start to make sense of it. Now, for Fred, we'll call him Fred, for Fred, his father was very judgmental, very defensive, very bolshy, as he described. And he said, I guess I just copied him. It was the way I was brought up, really. It's just how it is. And I said, so who do those patterns belong to? Do they belong to your dad? Who, you know, I'm sure felt that he was doing the best he could with what he had. Or do they belong to you? He said, well, obviously they belong to him. Okay, so it's quite natural that you've copied some of those things. Would you like to give them back? Or do you want to keep them? Well, that's an easy question. Well, of course I want to give them back. Okay, so then I gave him a means of giving that back, and that's simply about helping someone relax, give him access to what causes that, going back to some of those memories. And then you can do something called, it sounds fancy, it's called neutralization. And basically what it means is it enables you to make sense of what had gone on before so that you don't let it hold you back anymore. And as a result of that, you then have to hardwire that new behaviour of not giving your power away, for example. And I said to him, I said, right, it takes 7 to 21 times to develop a new habit, a new behaviour. So I want you to get me 21 examples of finding that when somebody gives you feedback, for example, you're not defensive, you just receive the feedback, you explain to yourself that actually this person is just giving you information, however clumsily, and just take out of it what are the facts. And then do something with that. And he said, right. And he went off and did that. And we have 2 follow-up calls with people. The first one, just to check in with them within sort of 48 hours. You know, is it all making sense? Do they know what they're doing? Although we send them an email explaining it all. And then we check in with them 4 to 6 weeks later about having got those examples. And he's developed those examples and he's in a much better place. More importantly for the employer, he's back at work, because he feels like he has a plan now. And psychologically, you always need to believe you've got a plan. When you don't have a plan, that's when you go down a slippery slope.
Understood. Great example, and many questions flow from it. First one being, is this just a form of psychotherapy? And I say that not in a pejorative, negative way, but it sounds like psychotherapy. And I have tried psychotherapy and sort of the reprogramming of my mind somewhat and understanding where some of my traits come from. Mm-hmm. Would you regard that as psychotherapy?
It is psychotherapy, although I tend to stay away from calling it that, because sometimes people can believe that psychotherapy sounds a bit heavy. The reality is that actually psychotherapy is quite simply as a process. It's about closing your eyes so that you can go into a relaxed state, and then somebody who is skilled in that field talking you through how to access what's caused some of the things that you're temporarily being challenged by so that you can start to fix it.
Got it. A second question that flows from the Fred example is, was this something that the employer paid for, was happy to pay for, and saw the results of their cold hard cash?
Absolutely, they're happy to pay for it because it's on a guarantee basis. So that means that if we don't get at least 18 examples of how it's made a difference to their performance, we simply give all the money back. Now I'm going to be straight with you, Andrew. They always generate more than 18 examples. It's usually between 30 and 40 examples, if not more. Why is that? Because on average people have 3 sessions of 2 hours coaching, and after each session they're getting at least 21 examples, so you can work out the maths for yourself. And people feel really, really buzzy and excited about getting themselves back as to who they were before they had all that baggage. And people are pretty unique. It's about respecting that individual uniqueness and working with what's going on for them.
A third question, and this one's the toughie of all of those.
Oh, go for it.
Is, in this example of Fred, and good old Fred has made a change, and I'm sure his employer is happy. However, if Fred has made such seismic changes with you, perhaps he no longer wants to work for his employer anymore, and he's realised actually he should have been a safari wildlife keeper in South Africa somewhere, or he should have been a yoga teacher in Iceland. I mean, are the changes so magnificent, seismic, that they change their work? Is that a risk?
Absolutely, it's a risk. And to be fair, there's nothing wrong with having a reputation as an employer, as having such good people that, everybody wants them. Because that means that the new people you are attracting know that you've got this reputation for growing people, making a difference. Now, on the other hand, having made those changes for themselves, as long as you are an employer that really takes time and interest in your employees, people will be happy. Sometimes people say, how do you define happiness? Well, happiness is about having a goal, and it's about having something to stretch for. I'm not talking about stretching you to the point that you're so stressed you're off work. I mean having something to go for, and making sure that all those sort of basic needs are met: a roof over your head, food in your belly, a means of feeding your children. So people will stay with an employer if their needs are being met. And that's about understanding people's motivations, understanding their real talent. Sometimes people take somebody on purely on the basis of their technical skills. There are 3 things you need to assess when you're taking somebody on. First of all, what's their motivation, and along with the baggage that could be getting in the way. Secondly, of course, their technical skill. And thirdly, what is their commercial awareness of where they fit in the organisation? Everybody wants to know, what part do they play in the overall scheme of things? If that's not really explained, then sometimes people can feel like they're in like this silo where they're just doing something and yet they don't know how it fits into the bigger picture. It's important that people know that they're valued and they belong because of the things that they've got going for them.
I agree entirely with all those words you said. So much wisdom. Going back to your point of motivation, when an employer is trying to hire, and I am an employer and I hire frequently, how do you work out the candidate's true motivation?
That's a great question, and there are 2 ways of doing it. Obviously, they could use our profile tool that does it in less than half an hour, and you've got the 7 areas of motivation and 12 areas of baggage. Or there are some questions you can ask. And these two questions are essential for anyone recruiting somebody. The first one is for motivation. And that question is, what are some of the things that are important to you about doing this role? Now you'll notice I haven't said what's important to you. When you use language like some of the things, you take the pressure off and you'll find out so much more about that individual and find out about their motivations, what excites them, etc. And then there's this business of understanding people's beliefs that drive their behaviours in the business, those on-off switches that I mentioned earlier. And this is the question you'd use. Assuming this role has worked for you, what sorts of things will have made sure that delivered for you? Now you might think, well, that's a lot of words, Sonia.
It is.
This is about the art of shifting people into having imagined that they've already been in that role. So what's that about? Well, when you use ED words, so you simply add ED to the end of all your words, and this is important for sales as well. So if you had have decided that, if you had have achieved that, if you had have resolved, determined, supported, by using ED words just at the end of your words, you take people into having imagined that they've done something. And by doing that, you will find out from that candidate what are those things that need to be in place. Now, if they turn around and say, well, as long as you take an interest in me and I've got a progression ladder, etc., then you know what that belief's about. However, if they turn around and they say, well, for it to have worked for me, I need you to sort of give me, a pay rise at least once a year, and I want you to make sure I'm appreciated. I don't like it when people, don't tell me I'm appreciated. This is starting to tell you about the beliefs. Or they say something like, well, I don't like it, it only works for me if people don't criticise me. I find sometimes people don't understand where I'm coming from. This is telling you about their belief patterns, that they might be defensive, they might be hard work to have as an employee. So it's about understanding that motivation and the belief patterns driving the behaviour. That way, you know what's in front of you.
What follows from that then is this. When hiring, or maybe even when looking for a partner, I suppose, should we be looking for people with high EQs, emotional intelligence, or high IQs?
EQ every time. So why is that? Why would you go for emotional intelligence as opposed to just... I think, obviously, being technically able to do what somebody has to do, whether that's a partner or indeed that's in the business, then yes, that goes without saying. However, what you will find is that their emotional intelligence, and indeed leading to emotional resilience, will determine how they respond to everyday challenges. Now, you and I know, being in business these days, it's not a pushover. There will be a few bumps in the road, and you need to be able to manage that. Now, if you're defensive, needy, find that you can't deal with everyday challenges, then, to be frank and not being too hard about it, you're going to be an expensive employee. And you could be hard work as a partner as well. So it's about understanding those things about an individual so that you know what you're getting.
Thank you. Moving to work-life balance, work-life harmony, whichever is your preferred one, and you might not like either term. In this world where emails are constantly pinging into your inbox, and if you're at home in the evening and you've got a spare 5 minutes, and you can get rid of those emails, so when you go into work the next day, they're not there and your life is easier. In this world of sort of everything is work and everything is play, how is this impacting upon people at work's minds?
First of all, there has to be time to play. There has to be time to reflect. The way the mind works, it makes sense of things by having time to refile what's gone on in the day whilst you are relaxed. If you're still thinking about work when you get home, what chance does your system have of just putting things in order and having some downtime? If you don't have some downtime, and this is about how the mind reacts to what you do to your space at home. So, for example, if you do your emails, God forbid,